I'm Karina Okotel, and welcome to the weekly wrap-up. On the Victorian lockdown front, our state is justifiably getting more and more incensed with the Premier as further information comes to light around his decisions to impose the longest consecutive lockdown of any city in the entire world. Shockingly, we learnt that the decision to impose a curfew on us was not that of the Chief Health Officer or the Chief Police Commissioner, but was Daniel Andrews' decision alone. But under the state of emergency, only an authorised officer can give a direction to protect public health, such as imposing a curfew. The Premier, despite having no legal power to do so, brought in this restriction himself. On Thursday, the Shadow Attorney General, Ed O'Donoghue, wrote to the Premier saying, "To allay the growing community concerns that you and your government may have enacted some of the current restrictions in an unlawful manner, it is imperative you urgently release any legal advice you have from the Solicitor General or other sources to confirm the legality of your government's curfew." So far, the government has shown utter contempt for the opposition, completely ignoring them. Let's see if they bother to get back to the Shadow Attorney General, or if they continue to have police fining people over $1,600 for leaving their homes after 8 p.m, potentially without any lawful authority to do so. At his daily update on Wednesday, Premier Andrews had this to say.
We'd all like to be open tomorrow, myself included. So that's in the 90s. That first metric. There are a number of people that you just can't find. That I have chosen this way to go, and there were 50 other options I could have chosen. That's not in any way accurate. We'd all like to be open tomorrow, myself included. But to do that is not an act of leadership. That is to cave to some of the pressure that's there, to be driven by the anger instead of the epidemiology, to be driven by opinion instead of science and data and doctors. That is not what I'm about.
The Victorian Premier has said that his decisions are driven by science and data and doctors, but he has continued to ignore the now more than 600 Victorian doctors who've written an open letter to him calling for an end to the lockdown. Jeffrey Wells, the highly respected urologist who penned the open letter, now signed by more than 600 Victorian doctors, joins me now. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thanks very much, Karina, and thanks very much for giving myself, on behalf of the 600 doctors, the opportunity to speak to you. We're very grateful.
No, and what can you tell me are the effects of the lockdown?
Well, the letter we've written, Karina, basically, our basic premise is that the lockdown is causing more harm than good. And this is a letter, or a significant part of the letter in a nutshell. Now, what we think is that the lockdown's having severe economic side effects, and we've got an enormous amount of sympathy for the business people, and they're feeling gutted. But what we really believe is that the health effects are going to be actually worse than the economic effects, and we think that the health effects could actually be catastrophic. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, from a health point of view, we're very, very concerned about the delay in diagnosis of cancer patients. Excuse me. So I could give you, basically what's happening is patients aren't being referred from the GPs to the specialists. And there's a few reasons for this, but one of the major reasons is that, first of all, the patients aren't going to the GPs. And secondly, patients, there's an enormous amount of fear in the community and they don't want to leave their homes. I'll give you a personal example. And This is a friend of mine, Mark Allen, and I've spoken to Mark about this, and this has been displayed on the media previously, on the couch, and Hamish McLaughlin in the Sun. And Mark and I both play at the same golf course. He's a much better golfer than me. He used to be a professional. We were chatting prior to me going out to play, and I was just about to leave, and he said, "Look, Doc, just one other thing." And he described his altered bowel habits. And I said, "Look, Mark, I think I'm a bit concerned about this, but I'll organise it for you as quickly as we can." Now, within a week, Mark had his colonoscopy, he'd had a biopsy, he had his treatment plan organised, and he was well on the way to his recovery. But unfortunately, Karina, if this happened now, he would be waiting at least 2 to 3 months. And, as he said to me, if I had to wait that long, I could have died from the condition. So that's the problems with delay in diagnosis. But we also think, the other hand, is the problems of mental and social problems. And now we know that the incidence of depression in the community is rising dramatically. The incidence of self-harm for children at the Children's Hospital, that's the incident. The people get presenting, they're about 30% up. Now, suicides is always tragic. As we know, there's 3,000 suicides a year in Australia. And I know recently people have said that the suicide rate hasn't increased. Well, we think anecdotally, and from what we're hearing at the coalface, Karina, suicide rates are increasing quite significantly. And basically what's happens when there's a suicide is it has to go to the coroner, and there's often a delay of 6 to 12 months. So we think the results that are coming through are actually delayed. And, it's going to be tragic, but we think there's going to be significantly more people committing suicide than the terrible mental effects, as we've said, fear, isolation. It's just awful. Plus the fact children, it's affecting all people, school children, university students, people starting off families, going right through to 60, 70 and 80-year-olds, affecting all the population. And basically, we really want to sit down with the policy instigators of the lockdown. Now,
thanks very much, Jeffrey. Hopefully the Premier will give you an audience soon, but sadly, the way things are, I wouldn't be holding my breath. And now, on to the Oscars. It looks like the common sense section of society need to get better at inventing hashtags fast. It's incredible how powerful a hashtag can be in today's day and age to incite change. And the left have wielded the power of the hashtag expertly. They're incrementally and almost imperceptibly transforming society and moulding it into the emerging paradigm of victims versus oppressors and of conformity, categorization and control. The left's latest trophy is the Oscars, after pressure was brought to bear on the Academy of Motion Picture and Arts and Sciences through the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite, created in 2015. It became a particularly powerful weapon, seemingly gaining legitimacy when only white actors happened to be nominated for the Oscars over the last 2 years. This week, the Academy announced its plan to implement representation and inclusion standards from 2024. A film must meet at least 2 out of the 4 of these standards to be eligible to be nominated for an Oscar. And what are these standards? Well, either a significant actor must be a non-white person, or the storyline, creative leadership, technical crew, trainees, studio executives, or ensemble cast must have a minimum number of people being female, non-white people, LGBTQ+, or people with disabilities. Interestingly, international feature films don't need to comply with these standards. So a non-English speaking all-white cast is permissible, or even an all-Asian production, just not if the film is made in a predominantly white English-speaking country. Once again, the left have successfully ushered in a highly controlled standard to limit the so-called privileged white Anglophonic oppressors, and another for all the rest of us who are apparently their victims. Well, That's another week wrapped up. Don't forget to tune in to Conservative One with George Christensen on Saturday. Make sure you subscribe and donate to the Good Source to keep fighting fake news. And to take us out this week, it looks like the Democrats aren't going to quit hijacking the Black Lives Matter movement for their own political agenda right up until the 3rd of November for the US election. And here's a fantastic video of a Trump supporter schooling Democrat supporters brilliantly.
In Joe Biden, I'm not voting in Joe Biden. You want to see a bunch of black people go to jail by the next 4 years? Put Joe Biden in. Watch what happens. You want to see black men get killed substantially, like you've never seen before? Put Joe Biden in and watch what happens. These Democrats, and I'm sorry to say this, I'm not trying to be racist, but they hate black people. These are the same people who fought to keep slavery in. These are the same people who built the KKK. These are the same people who hated us from the beginning. The Republican Party is the party of the blacks. Blacks free. The Republican Party is the only party that the black people actually assisted in finding. But all of that history has been torn away. People say, "Oh, there was this big switch." There was never a big switch. The Union won because we had grown in the industrial era. So we were able to get trains and get supplies back to our soldiers while the Confederate was still riding horses. They were not able to get the supplies back fast enough, right? So what happened was once slavery was abolished in the South, the people in the South could no longer make their money from slaves. They had to move to the North to work in the industry to produce. And so the people in the North that already had established themselves in the industry moved to the South. And so that's where it was a transfer of people coming from the South to the North and people coming from the North to the South. There was never a big switch. So the same Democrats who hated black people from the beginning are the same ones who hate us now. And they use our cause. How did Black Lives Matter turn into something about LGBTQ? When blacks really don't support that. We're conservative. We're really not about that. Not only that, we don't support abortion. We're about work. This is the black culture. We ain't never been about that. Not only that, we're not about feminism. No, we're not. Black women marry their husbands and respect their husbands. That's what we on. We're not on this. Oh, I do what I want. We don't do that. That's not our community, and you would understand. I know you understand what I'm saying. We don't do that. But yet these people are hijacking our movement, and the Democratic Party, they're trying to hijack our stuff. No. You want the benefit of Christ, but you don't want